so we had our 4 weeks of the study of the dependent origination. It changed Jane's life, didn't it? You're not the same, are you? I'll give you money afterwards. No, you just get a free retreat. We don't give money. And for me, so I've been reading and studying for months and months and months before we did that, because the whole thing was just a little bit beyond my reach. And when I was writing the Dharma Corner, the first sentence actually began with Browning's, a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for. So I know that. I love that, right? Do you know that, don't you? A man's reach or a woman's reach should exceed her grasp, or what's a heaven for. And I thought when we did that course, oh my Lord, was that ever? It was really just almost beyond my reach. And in order to understand it, I saw that it was important to study it from a non-Theravada, because I've been studying Theravada for 20 years, 30 years. So I got introduced to Nagarjuna, who taught the middle way. You don't need to memorize any of this. This is not what I'm talking about. But this is called just setting it up. So, but the reading from other traditions, it has been extraordinarily valuable for me. Just extraordinarily valuable. It's almost like, even the Buddha has this story about the blind men trying to describe an elephant, right? So there's like 12 of them. Well, it's a very long, thin thing, right? So, it's a very large, round thing. So, everyone together, if you could put it all together, perhaps you would have, you might come close to it, but might not. But I certainly think the Buddha Dharma is exactly that it's too vast to really grasp it from the narrow lens of any singular tradition. And if you were able to be open to positions and interpretations that are maybe not the comfortable ones that you've been taught, it can be quite mind expanding. I was at a retreat a few years ago, and with a wonderful Theravadan teacher, wonderful teacher. And so they had, I looked at Cindy, especially because she likes wonderful Theravadan teachers. I know. And somebody, innocently enough, there was always a question answer period, and someone innocently enough asked a question about, in relation to the Dharma talk, and it was something about like, well, is that a koan? And this guy's Theravadan, right? So what the hell is a koan to a Theravadan? So he just dismissed it. And he says, I don't know anything about that. And I remember thinking at the time, that's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's the same thing as years ago, 30 years ago, I sat with a very famous Zen teacher. So in other words, it's the same thing. And so you walk in for your interview, and you tell them what your meditation practice is. And I said, I practice Vipassana. And he said, well, that's inferior to Zen. I thought, where am I? And it works on all ends, right? There's a tendency for, like, if you're this, then you kind of compare that. I remember when I was a little boy, and I went to the country to visit my aunt, and they said, well, Vic, have you been baptized? And that's a Tennessee accent, in case you remember. I said, yes, ma'am. I have. I was born in a Methodist family. So the Methodists, they take the water and they sprinkle it on your head. But now the Baptists, they take you and dunk you under. So I, when I was a little boy, I was christened. So anyway, I said, yes, ma'am, I have been baptized. And so my aunt, of course, she knew I had not. So according to her, and she said, well, so what did they do, Vic? And I said, well, they sprinkled the water on my head. And she said, that's not baptism, so you're still living in sin. So I was thinking of that. Isn't it amazing that we all do that? You know, I mean, it's amazing. So the Zen, if you're a Zen practitioner, then Theravada is inferior. It's because it's the old Pali scriptures and people cling to them. And if you're a Zen practitioner, sometimes the Tibetans look down and say, you know, after all, Zen is inferior to Vajrayana. So it goes on and on. If you're a Democrat, more than likely you consider the Republicans a bit inferior, and vice versa. It doesn't stop, does it? Does it? Can you think of some place that it stops? There's some place where we absolutely are open and accept the other, the opposite, totally.
I think that should really only apply to 18-karat gold and diamonds.
I agree. So all of that leads me to nowhere. We continually we enclose ourselves and our thoughts and our ideas and our prejudices, don't we? And that make that right. And then anything that's kind of close to that, right? I mean, if you sort of agree, well, then you're okay, right? But if you don't agree, then you're the other. And so in the reading that I was doing, as I said in the Dharma Corner, I came across this word that I had never read in Theravada. Never read it for 30 years. I'd never seen that word. Who knew? And it was quite interesting. And I just wanted to talk about it a little bit. So I in studying Nagarjuna, he has this kind of Nagarjuna, who, as some of you know, he's about 500 years after the Buddha died. He lived in India about right in the 1st century Common Era, and to say he was a smart dude is something of an understatement. He's actually been called the second Buddha in terms of, like, in Mahayana, they regard him as somewhat the founder. But he had this way of rather relentlessly attacking our concrete ideas, the way we will reify. So this is, again, it's like you would say, this is the truth. You know, he would sort of say, really? Well, let's talk about it. And before you know it, you're bleeding. because basically he would show that you're coming from supposition and presupposition and prejudice rather than from just bare attention to what is. So he had this word that he used, and it was the word that I have sort of fallen in love with. And I'm going to really just invite you all to fall in love with it also. I really am serious about that, by the way. I can't pronounce it, unfortunately. Maybe, the wheel of becoming. This is the way to get it, though. That famous the wheel of becoming that's in our book back there is called becoming is called bhava. It's the 9th nidana. So anyway, the word that creeps into Nagarjuna, and then later even more and more into Buddhism, is Svabhava. Svabhava, or Swabhava, if you want to. The Palis don't pronounce the V's. My name would be Victor in Pali. Your name would still be Jane, because there's no V in it. Victor. Or, so it might be Swabhava, but it is a V, but that's a Sanskrit word, Svabhava. So I entitled the Dharma Corner yesterday, Do You Svabhava? And I was thinking about it like as a waltz, right? Because a waltz is a noun, right? And svabhava is a noun. But you can also waltz, right? It can be a verb, right? You can listen to a waltz, but you can also waltz. And so I was thinking maybe you could see svabhava, or maybe you could do it. But I noticed that some people, actually one writer calls it svabhavizing. Yeah, svabhavizing. It's seeing the permanent and the impermanent. It's seeing a self in emptiness. And it's seeing pleasure in what is inevitably going to lead to pain. That's Svabhava. It actually means, in English, probably the closest word is essence. Essence, right? So, as I said in the Dharma Corner, at the time that the Buddha was born, 560 BC, maybe 550. At the time he was born, in the beautiful, wonderful Upanishads had evolved. They started out, in the Vedas, they started out with sort of like the personal gods, and there was Shiva, the Vishnu, the personal gods. But I mean, they were all pretty powerful, I suppose, even though they were personal. But anyway, they slowly evolved from Brahma, which is the god of creation, not totally different, I would think, from Jehovah, not totally different. But from Brahma, the Indians moved to this concept of Brahman, the cosmic force, the cosmic energy that is almost beyond words. Now this was, and so in the Upanishads, so they worked with that, and they worked with that, and then there was another kind of slowly developing thing, developing the Atman, the concept of the soul. And so many people would say that the pinnacle of Indian religious thought is when they finally put them together. Ah, they're the same, right? Brahman, the cosmic force, and this and the individual soul are somewhat the same, not exactly. And then there's the wonderful Indian mantra, I am that. And that's what it means. I am that. The soul, the Atman and the Brahman are one. So as I said in the Dharma Corner, and not about 100 years later than that, comes this guy Plato, who conceives of this, comes up with this idea of transcendental forms, that there's an essence that exists beyond changing phenomena, right? There's something beyond that and he called it form. I could tell you what it means in Greek if I knew. So, okay, so here comes this little guy, little guy named Robert Buddha, and he just blew it all to hell. He just blew the whole thing. He did. He said, no, there is no such thing. That's all a figment of your imagination. Now, whether he used this word or not, we don't know. I don't know if he used that word, Svabhava. Maybe he did. But the word that he used, we know in the early Pali, is anatta, no so, anatta. He said, there ain't no such thing. It's your need to hold on to something, your need to create some essence that something as a protection against what I call the unbearable lightness of being. I think that's one of the smarter things that somebody has written, as far as I'm concerned. I think that expression, the unbearable lightness of being, is extraordinary. It's extraordinary. It's beautiful, and it's true. We can't bear to be as light as we really are. We need ballast. It's like the balloon, right? When it goes up, what keeps it down is those bags of sand around it, right? We need a lot of bags of sand to keep us with this sense of solidity and continuity and weight. So the Buddha just sort of blew that all to hell, and the story is in the 3 watches of the night when he sat under the Bodhi tree, that he had insight in the first 3 hours, he had insight in the second 3 hours, and then at the dawn he had what's called his great illumination or awakening. But he saw that what did he see? I guess from the little course that we did. And by the way, we're going to do it next year, and I expect everybody here to be here, including you, Beverly. No excuses. You can get off in the library. So what he saw, like a lot of people say, well, he saw the First Noble Truths, which may be true. But what he saw is that everything depends on something else, right? Your mom and dad had to sort of, create. Everything depends on something else. Nothing is autonomous. I've always thought that's fascinating because, in Western psychology, which I really love, I really do. Autonomy is a very good thing, right? In Western psychology, it's a very good thing. A lot of the, people who are not able to individuate, I'm still a baby. People who are still kind of attached to their mom and dad, and then they grow up and they attach to their husband or their wife, right? It's the same thing, right? Daddy, is that you? But but it doesn't look like that. It really looks like now, like, oh no, I've got this husband or I've got this wife. But no, it's mommy and daddy. That's very sad. Well, that's not necessarily true, though. That would be true if you didn't individuate, if you didn't develop this ability to be what Jung would call autonomous. So I'm not going to even try to work that out with Buddhism. I really am, but I'm not going to right now. But if you just said, let's just cut through the crap, right? Taryn, let's cut through the crap. Right? If you just cut through the crap, strip it down. Everything depends on everything else. Nothing is, as Hemingway said, no man is an island. But the Buddha saw this clearly and profoundly, that every moment that is rising, it's rising out of a previous moment. And that every moment that we are experiencing is really coming from causes and conditions of the previous moments. And in this moment, you are really you're creating the next moment. Really, to some extent this afternoon, after we go, to some extent we're creating a little karma probably even for this tonight. Sunday afternoon, very often Sunday nights are maybe nicer than other nights in the evening because we have sat together. I really think that's probably true. So, so the Buddha said, everything is rising and falling, passing away from causes and conditions. So I guess you could just say, I'm just making all this up. I don't think there was a Buddha. So you would say then, I think I wrote this. Is that all there is? Is that all there is? And then I think some of us would say, well, oh, I almost said a bad word. Some of us would say, well, to hell with it, right? If that's all there is, what's the point of living? Which is a very stupid question, but never mind. But, in other words, is that all there is? I want more than that. I want there to be more than just that life is, is just that everything is dependent on everything else. And then, if you really think about it, well, where's that come from? Where's that need for there to be more? Svabhava. It's Plato's fault. But oh, damn Plato. Or we can even blame the Upanishad. But from the beginning of what you would call our human beings as we are. I don't know why I took my watch off. Human beings as we've been for thousands and thousands of years, we have relentlessly created these ideas about something existing beyond this moment. Because why? Because it's scary. It's just scary. And those are, some of you who know me as a therapist know that I'm kind of attracted to the idea of how much of us is grown up and how much of us is still a little boy or a little girl. Because you look at a big body and you think, well, there's a grown up for you, right? There's a grown up. That could be like 12 years old sitting there in that sweater. Hello, little John. It could be emotionally somewhat 12, right? But there it is, right? It looks like it's 40 or 50. How old are you, little Cindy? How old? So, the reason why I'm saying that is, do you know why I'm saying that? Because if you're young inside, it's scary to feel that there ain't something out there that's going to take care of me, that's watching over me, that's looking down on me, that, like, okay, so maybe my parents are, I can't depend on them anymore, but there's something out there. And then, we don't stop at that, right? We then invest essence in, it's not enough to have like a little dog or a cat. It becomes, it becomes my love. It's, I can't live without it. And our partners and our philosophies, religion, politics. How many people live on a daily basis based on their politics? It's amazing. That's Svabhava. So I just throw that out there. That number one, I don't think there's anything else in this practice that we're doing. Some people approach Buddhism as a moral tradition from the morality standpoint. Do you know what I mean? And because you could say that a lot of Theravada is basically moral, right? It's about teaching you to be good, to be a good person, to be good, to metta, to practice metta, to be loving, and then there's nothing wrong with that. There is nothing wrong with that. Svabhava, moralism, that would be, if you're good, you'll go to heaven. That's exactly what that is, right? That's moralism connected to Svabhava, which means, be good for the reward that you're going to get. Yeah, and if you're bad, you're going to go to hell, or you're going to, in Buddhism, you'll be going to a lower form. But the other aspect to Buddhism is freedom, release. That's that word soteriological. release, freedom. And again, it's not, just Buddhism. It's in other, I guess, form of it is in, like in Christianity, Jesus will save you. That's actually the same thing, but we're not going to be, the problem with Buddhism is if you debunk Svabhava, you're in a lot of trouble with Jesus. Never mind. But so the idea in Buddhism, as I said, is we're not. I have not a lot of interest in our trying to be better people, nicer and sweeter, and so it means that I'm not really necessarily that popular, because I think this is all about being free, period, and only, period and only. It's about being free. So if you have faith that that's possible, you begin with that, because if you don't have faith that you can be free, I can promise you might as well go back, go to some other organization. But it's about being free. So to the degree that you Svabhava, you ain't going to ever be free. You never will be. I never will be. To the degree that you relentlessly create, this fantasy that there's something other than this living, breathing moment right here, right now. And to the degree that you or I or all of us create these, what I call it, warm fuzzies to make life easy. It's what we do. It's what we do, right? I mean, it's like, because again, it's kind of like, it's too, reality. I don't think I said that. Okay, I remember it. The reason why I was talking about being 12 years old, John, or maybe I did I say that already? I can't. I truly can't. I'm just saying that it's about growing up. Buddhism is actually about growing up, tremendously growing up, and being able to embrace the truth of dependent origination. That's what it's about. And to some extent, those of us who are still more or less a little childlike, which is about everybody I know, including myself, it's scary. It's scary. Death should not be scary. Death and dying should not be scary at all. Not at all. Now, anybody got any issue with death in here? Yeah? Oh my God. Well, yes, I do. Well, what's your problem? Well, I don't want to die. Who is that doesn't want to die? Svabhava. It's a thought that has reified itself into a person.